Friendship Road with her sister Marie Klaus down at Tony and Catherine's home down on Santowasso, down on Friendship Road with her sister Marie Klaus
Walker,
and her favorite son-in-law, Mike Murphy.
Yeah.
And we'll start off with Marie.
Okay.
What are your early memories of South Brunswick?
Well, I know I moved here when I was 5 years old, 1919, right, Grandma?
I guess so. I don't know.
And you want to know the location of where we
Yes.
lived?
Sure.
What was that pink house across the street from you, that big mammoth house?
What Griggs?
Griggs.
The Griggs.
Griggs. We lived in the Griggs home, and we lived there several years.
They didn't own that place at that time.
Well, who owned it?
I'm just telling them where we lived,
Yeah, okay.
Catherine.
Well, I'm trying to.
Correct things.
Across from the Murphy Funeral Home.
Roland owned that house.
Roland owned the house.
I think his name was John Roland, and his brother lived next door, right across from the church, Miller Memorial Church. At that time, that church was a Episcopalian church.
Yeah, okay.
And then after several years, then we moved to,
Hungry Hill.
don't call it Hungry Hill.
That's what everybody else does.
Right, Hungry
what it
Hill.
was known
And
as.
that is now the property of Dr. Davies. That's where we lived all through our childhood, up until I was about 14 or 15, then we moved to North Brunswick. Okay?
Why they call it Hungry Hill?
Because we were hungry up there.
People,
Now we know.
What was the answer again to that?
Kiki, do you remember your mother and father living up there?
Yes, I don't remember that, but
Yeah.
I can, they
I don't
told me
remember
about
them
living
either. I
up
know the
there.
Finnegans lived up there.
The people that owned the Spar home,
Stryker.
Stryker, very good. Mrs. Spar told us this morning that he
Was a doctor.
was a doctor, and he was the doctor.
And Anderson bought it from Ship, and Ship went up to the church.
Okay. All right, we're going back now.
Okay, go
The
ahead.
Stryker bit, can you erase that?
Nah, leave it on. Go ahead.
Because we used to get milk up there. from
Okay,
Ship.
we're back to Marie, and what did
I'm
you,
not
the
going
last
to give
thing
it
you
to you. I'm going to let her
said?
tell it to you.
Do you want to know where we went to school? Because that was
Yes.
the Monmouth Junction Public School on New Road.
We're the
New Road,
first-
is that
Yeah,
Yeah.
it only
across
had,
from Uncle Nick's?
right,
Yeah, okay.
right on New Road. And it only had 4 classrooms. This is quite interesting. I don't know whether anyone told you that or not. There were only 4 large rooms in that building, and there were 2 classes in each room.
I must have told you that.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, she's going to tell
I
us.
must-
Yeah, that's okay, because we want other people to
And
confirm
they
it.
had sliding, like accordion doors that separated the midway through the classrooms. So that you started grade 1, no kindergarten those days, grade 1, and then you went through the 8th grade. And I don't know whether they told you Elizabeth Weaver was then the principal of that school. And,
Miss Free, she was downstairs.
well, she was one of the teachers in the other grades. I don't remember all those other teachers. There were some.
How about some of your classmates?
Ruth Weaver was one of my classmates. Ruth Batara. And there was a Stella Balone. She didn't continue her education, but she was. And then, what was that Hunt boy's first name? Elson Hunt? Was he in your class or mine?
Elson Hunt.
Ruth Weaver would always put the tall boys, I'm going to be very nice about it, the tall boys way in the back. They were dummies. But she put all of them back there.
What'd she say?
Nothing, just go.
No, I don't
go.
want to go on the machine. And then the other of us would sit, closer to the front. But, and in other words, well, she always had the 7th and 8th grades, didn't she?
Mrs. Weaver?
Yeah.
Mhm. Even when I went there, she
So
did.
that,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you some interesting things about the school. There was no heat in it. And there were only outside privies. Did you know that?
First year I went there,
Oh, you
that
still
was
had
the
it
still
then?
case,
Oh,
yes.
we had to go way
Was
in the
still the
back.
case when you-
6
yeah?
feet of snow. Yeah, you had to go way in the back through the snow.
Back by Delray's. Back by Del Rey's fence.
Yeah.
I know it was way back there. And the boys would try to peek in all the time when the girls were in there.
I believe that. Were your brothers and sisters in that school at the
They
time?
all
Yes, all my brothers, yeah.
Everyone but Bob. Bob had already graduated.
And there were
Yeah.
two
My
girls?
brother Ed, my brother Wes, Sylvester, and my brother Michael, and then Grandma and myself, and then
Henry and
Elizabeth. There were 7 of us. That went 7.
It was not. That was
And what
8 of us altogether.
What did you do for entertainment in Monmouth Junction at that time?
Well, normally you would just, play with your friends. And then in the wintertime, where the post office is now, that was a hill. It's now leveled off, but it was quite a hill. As you know, you go down the hill to get to, I can't think of the name of it, Dawson used to live there. So we would go sleigh riding on that hill. And then we would also go over there behind the lumber yards, ice skating.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, they had a very nice ice skating
Scouts Pond?
pond there. And but we did because the snows, the winters were much more severe then.
Did you have a movie house?
Yes, we had a movie house on
Across from
right
Santowasso.
across from this Santawasso's bar there.
It wasn't a bar at that time. It was
Grocery store?
a grocery store.
Well, anyway,
Something you heard today.
and they had nothing
You
but
know?
benches in the movie. I think you paid a nickel, if I'm not to get in the movie. And so we would go across to the store and get our ice cream cone.
Oh, yeah.
Then we would go to the movies and pay our nickel. And then they had, the only movies they had would be like Tom Mix, the serial type. So that at the end of the movie, it would be one of those, one of those very exciting where either the train's going to run over them or something's going to happen to them. And and that was every Friday night. So we went every Friday night, as far as I can remember, didn't we? Didn't we usually go every Friday
Every
night?
Friday night, 'cause
Yeah.
we couldn't go. They had it twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. But
Oh,
we
I can
couldn't
remember
go.
the Tuesday.
But we couldn't go on
Oh,
Tuesdays.
okay.
So
Where'd you get your ice cream?
Over at Santawasso's.
They had an ice cream at that time?
That's where we got our
Way
ice
back
cream
then?
from.
Because I remember, oh yeah, I guess so, yeah. It was an ice
Yeah.
cream parlor when and then he changed it to the package store.
Yeah.
yeah,
Right, I
we
was
changed
thinking
it to
of
the
the
package
old-
store.
Right.
We
And
did.
my little old grandmother lived with us.
Right?
And so we would line up in front of my grandmother on movie nights, and we'd have this, put this hand out, and she always had those little white mints, those little miniature mints. So she'd drop a few in this hand, and then in this hand she'd give us a nickel. So the nickel paid for the ice cream, and my mother and father paid for the movie. Well, you know what salaries were in those days, what, $10, $12, $15 is all that they made in those years.
Now, Marie, you went to Monmouth Junction School, then where did you go?
Then from there, then the first year I went to Princeton High. Then after that we moved to North Brunswick, so I went to the New Brunswick High. Then from New Brunswick High I went to St. Peter's Medical Center School of Nursing. And then after that, then I did graduate work at Rutgers and Trenton State. And forever it seems. I took a couple of courses down where you were too, didn't I, Catherine? Georgian Court. And then I ended up, well, I was a public health nurse for many years. And then I worked for the Board of Education in Piscataway as a health education teacher and a school nurse until I retired. So it was Murray, I worked 50 years.
Well, going back to your early South Brunswick days and going to the movies, did you go to the Dayton dances Friday nights?
No.
No, you didn't do that.
I don't even remember.
You probably
did that
had
happen?
moved to North Brunswick then.
Oh, yeah.
But that was
We
about all
could-
there was to do in Monmouth Junction. Go to the
So-
movies and go sleigh ride. So if you didn't have
Joel
snow.
mentioned
There were
Dayton
no
dances.
activities, and of
Hey,
course,
Kiki, when we grew up, we didn't even have the movies.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
Backwards.
so many of
Joel
us were
mentioned
great
the Dayton
readers. I
dances.
did a lot of reading. I used to, as a matter of fact,
Yeah.
she'd get mad at me because
She'd hide all the time.
I'd get my books and I'd hide because I wanted to read. So I was always a very great reader. And I think many of us did that sort of thing, to take up our time. But we would play with neighborhood children, and
Did
as
I
I
ever
said,
tell you that?
Were your mom and dad immigrants
Yeah.
from
Germany.
Germany?
they
Why
came
did
over when they were both very young.
Why did they come here?
Why? I would assume because they thought there were better opportunities in this
My
country.
mother came with 2 cousins, girl cousins.
They didn't come, my father and mother met in this country though, they didn't.
Were there,
Yeah,
That's not before they came, after my mother came, then one of her brothers came and located in Connecticut. But that's the only one that, and another one in the western part of Canada. But that was in later years. And my father was an only living child, so there was no one
well,
on
did
his.
you miss South Brunswick when you moved?
I would assume that we did. It's been such a long time, but I would think so. But then I got involved with different students in the high school, and then from there I went into nursing, and so then you get more new friends. So it's just.
But I can always remember you coming back to the store, and when I was giving Catherine a rest, I was buying penny candy from you and an ice cream cone, right?
Well, you lived with Mom and Dad during the war, right?
I don't know when did I move in with you? Do you remember?
No.
Was it before the war?
yes,
Because I was there through 1945, I know.
Yeah, because it was before Butch was born, wasn't it?
Yeah, because I was at the Kitty Keepwell camp then when he was born. Yeah.
And then she stayed with me until she got married.
Catherine, do you remember the Depression?
Do I remember?
Oh, yes.
How did that affect you?
Well, my father's income was cut like in half, so everything had to be,
And none of the boys worked.
And what did your dad do?
He was an engineer for the chemical corporation here in Monmouth Junction. What was it called? Minor Edgar, I think.
Edgar, yeah.
You mentioned that.
He's foreman down there, yeah.
And your mom, your sister remembers a prison camp.
Do you remember that?
Well, Ruth Spataro does. Ruth Weaver
Yeah, you told me
Spataro
that,
does.
Up near Route 1, right?
Right.
Got near
Up near
Route 1.
Route 1, yeah.
You didn't, I guess you didn't go to the
But
ball.
no
what
one,
was the
no one
hotel that
seems
was
to
up there?
know. No one
Well,
seems
she
to know what
didn't-
kind
maybe
of prisoners were there.
She wouldn't go any place but read, so I guess.
Okay, isn't she? Your mother, the doozy.
I forget, Dad told us about the prison camp.
I never heard
and
of
how they used to play ball
We
against
used to
them.
play
Right.
ball. Bob and them used to play
They
ball.
played
up
ball
there.
against them, and I don't know whether they were German prisoners or...
I don't know. I don't think there were prisoners that, did anything bad.
No,
I
they
think
were
it was an
prisoners of
internment
war, I
camp.
think, I thought.
What was an
Yeah.
internment
I
camp?
thought it was a prisoners of war
See,
or
I didn't know
something
that. That's all I know.
World War I or something.
Yeah,
We have to
that's
find
what
that
it
out.
was.
We haven't been able to find that
Whether
out.
they were Italian prisoners or German prisoners or
It must
what,
have been
but
German.
Dad
I imagine
was telling me
maybe
about it.
German prisoners.
Oh, this
I
is
don't
something
know.
interesting
near
to say. You
San-
may want to have the machine shut off. I
No,
don't know.
go ahead.
But when we were small children, going to Monmouth Junction Elementary School, we were the only German children in town. And the kids would stone us. They would
Really?
actually throw stones at us and say, "There goes the German kids," didn't they? Mm-hmm.
Isn't that something? Even
Yeah,
back
it was
then.
traumatic as a
Yeah.
child because you felt like an outsider.
Yeah,
But they did
Well,
that.
then you were, wasn't that would say, what, 14 to 19, 14
Didn't they
to
throw stones at
1918?
us
That was,
too?
how old were you?
I was only 5, 6 years
That's what
old.
she said.
You were only
Didn't they
very
throw
young.
stones at us too?
Yeah, they threw stones at us. Yeah, there were the German kids, they say.
Oh, my
Well,
goodness.
but children do things like that. I think you have to sort of take it that way. But they did.
So, Mike, is there anything that they've told you that they
That you
haven't
can
told
think of?
us that you can remember, or something that you would like to share with us that you remember?
Well, the stork brought me in 1933 to Monmouth Junction, in a little house on New Road there.
Were you
And,
born in that house?
I was born in that house. It belonged to my grandfather.
And he was
Yeah. He was Michael Brabston. And so I was born there, I was raised there. That part of the town was known as the Bowery. I am from Sterl. And I had a cousin Terry, lived up around the corner. And we were in all kind of trouble always. But I also went to the same school that they went to.
Still have bathrooms?
But it had bathrooms inside at that time. We were lucky.
Was Mrs.
And,
Weaver there?
Mrs. Weaver was there,
And the other teachers were?
yeah. The other teachers was, well, when I started out, a Mrs. Mershon
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
taught me kindergarten,
Yeah.
first grade, I think. And then I went to, I don't know if Queen came in there or not,
I don't think you have
a Miss Poinsett,
Skank.
who later became Miss Babson.
Didn't you have a Mrs. Skank?
Yeah, I think Mrs. Skank, yeah. That may have been the Poinsett. And then she married and became Mrs. Babson. And then, of course, we went upstairs. You know, when you got to the upstairs, you were a big wheel, you know. You were a big wheel. It had stairs going up each side of the school, you know, and you got upstairs. You were a big wheel, but that was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And Mrs. Weaver taught all 3 of them.
She did when you...
Yeah, me too. When I was in, she taught me 6th, 7th, and 8th.
7th,
Yep.
and 8th grade. And she taught us everything. I mean,
She was an excellent teacher.
she was an excellent teacher. We were all, the 3 grades were in the one room. And maybe there was 4 or 5 in 6th grade, or maybe 10 in 7th grade, and 3 or 4 in 8th grade. And the other room was like empty, and we used that for what she called activity, an activity room. And it's another thing, Terry and I, your brother, we had a job to design the future South Brunswick. You know, and it was a big board, and we put houses and things in town hall and things, and it's pretty much like it is today. I wish, I don't know where that thing ever went. It probably got thrown in the attic at a school and torn down and thrown away, but I wish I could find that, because it's pretty much just the way it is now.
To Main Street.
Well, where the city hall is now, that's where we had it. That's pretty much the center of South Brunswick, and I think that's where we had the city hall and everything lined out there, and the streets and things. But what else was there about the school?
What did you do during World War II?
Did I do well? World War II, I was only, I think I was 8 years old maybe when it started, and I was 12, I think, when it ended.
And do you remember the rationing, that you couldn't go
I remember
anywhere?
the rationing, and I remember we always bought our groceries from the local grocery store, Mr. Young, down in on George's Road, and I guess you call it Dean's, but he'd come, and the sugar, you know, you had to ration the sugar, and the butter, he always had this yellow dot.
Oh,
It was white, like, it was oleo, it wasn't butter, you couldn't get butter, it had a yellow dot, and you had to mix it.
Yeah.
And that was one of my jobs, I had to mix it. But as far as where we grew up, your dad had a lot of chicken coops and things in the back of his house, and he had always had a lot of chickens. And Terry and I used to make clubhouses sometimes in the kids.
And let the chickens
And
out.
let the chickens out. They say we were always in trouble. And next to him, on that corner, was the Protestant church. That was the Protestant church at the time.
We all went to a Christmas Eve, right?
Yeah, because, well, I didn't. I never did.
You
No,
didn't, you know,
no.
yeah,
We
they
did.
always gave
We
the
did.
children
You did.
a stocking with an
Yeah.
orange.
No,
Always
I
did.
never went to it. But I
All the
can
Catholic kids
remember it.
went.
And then I remember when Sedrels bought it and turned it into a home, and the road was paved up as far as, who were the people on the end there? Denison?
Yes,
Denison. The road was paved as far as that. And from down there on, it was dirt. It was a dirt road. We call this the back road down here.
Black Ditch.
Black Ditch. Terry and I got in trouble there one day. We went out wandering around the Black Ditch, and Mother, and I guess your mom, Aunt May, thought sure we were drowned, but we were in back of Bosomenberries fooling around on the little pond or something they had back. And they came looking for us, I'll tell you.
Do you remember the building on Ridge Road, halfway down from the funeral home before you came to the bend in the road, crossing Weavers? It used to be Mechanics Hall, was it?
Oh, yeah.
You
Well,
know about that?
That's you talking about entertainment. This is what the entertainment we had. Well, growing up in graduation,
That's where they were, yeah.
usually was in the Mechanics Hall there. And we'd have programs from school. They would be held at the Mechanics Hall. It was a nice building. It had a nice stage and everything. Now, as far as my graduation from grammar school, we joined Dayton and graduated together.
Well, you went to Dayton School.
No, I didn't go to Dayton. I was the last 8th grade class in that Monmouth Junction school. After that, it went up to 6th grade, and they went over to 7th and 8th, I think.
I think Jane did too, didn't she?
Yeah, Jane did
Haven't
too.
Jane yet, no.
So
Then it went back to 8th grade when they started a new school, because I stayed here in that
were you
age group.
all the way up to 8th grade?
I was all the way
there?
up to 8th grade, but in the new Monmouth Junction school.
Yeah. Now I remember the railroad, the Pennsylvania Railroad, ran right through, divided the town, you know, well, from where we lived to uptown. And in time we had to go up there, we had to go across those tracks. And there were the 4 lines of the main Pennsylvania Railroad. And you had trains flying through there, but they had the gate with the gate tender. And we always had to holler over, make some kind of noise, so the gate tender would come out and he'd have to, you know, wind up the gates. And then we'd go over to Santowasso's and buy a penny's worth of candy and come back, and he'd have to wind up the gates again. You know, we'd probably go over there 2 minutes and come back again, and he'd have to wind up again. I was wondering, when I got older, I thought, you know, that must have been a real pain in the butt to that guy. Everything, you know, back and forth, we were back and forth. Must have been a dozen times, you know.
Do you remember the old railroad station?
Yes. It was
What do you
nice.
We
remember?
had to walk across those 4 tracks too to get to the other side, the New York
Yeah.
side.
What do you remember about the old railroad station?
Well, I used to take that train quite often to New York and to Newark and wherever, you know.
Some kid used to meet you too, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yes, a little 2-year-old. Every lunch hour when I was working, all my lunch hours were spent in the 5 and 10 because I had to come home with a gift, you know, something from the 5 and dime. And sometime he'd come down, he wouldn't even have any clothes on. He'd run down to meet the train.
Skinny dipping already, huh?
He'd run down to meet the train every day. He was spoiled.
So you're part of that spoiling.
Yes, I did.
It was
because
like having 2 mothers then.
I
Yeah.
bet. I know all about that.
And if you gave him, if you forgot where you bought him maybe a month or 2 before and gave him the same thing, oh, he'd throw it at you. He'd be so mad at you.
Now, Mike, would you share some of your Irish heritage with us?
My Irish, well, my father came from Ireland. He came from Glenn County, Wexford, Ireland. And Hick, I'm not really sure. I think he was around 19 years old when he came here. And he had brothers in Trenton and relatives that sponsored him to come over here. And I still have many relatives in Ireland yet. In fact, a couple of them were just here a week or so ago when we celebrated Marie. You know, remember Marie Murphy?
Yes.
We just celebrated her and her husband's 50th wedding.
And your brother's still living
I'm
in
going to
Greece?
show you your
No,
cousins.
no, he's dead.
Margaret Finnegan.
Mom?
Kathleen Finnegan.
Mom, bring that over here for a
This
second.
is Jenny. I had one with Marie and I in there. I don't know what happened to it.
All right. Well, what we'll do is we'll save this until after we talk to Mike for a few minutes. Just
When did I
yeah,
go?
just have a seat for a minute. Let Mike finish this, and then we'll go into this.
And from the story I got
Late 40s.
about my father and how I came to be was he hunted, you know, which most all did. And I think somehow they got into thing with Mike Brapston to come out and go hunting out here. It was good hunting. I mean, it was good hunting out here in those days. And
Your grandfather. Mike Brapston, your grandfather.
Mike Brapston, my grandfather. So Dad came out and my Uncle Joe and, you know, the other brothers that hunted. And he met this young lady named Mary Brapston. And from there on,
Beautiful.
he
young
ended
girl.
up marrying, and they have 4 children. And what else about his Irish heritage?
Well, did he ever talk about Ireland, speak about Ireland to you?
They used to kick, when they'd all get together, the brothers, most of them were in Trenton. Dad
But they
moved
were
out
happy
here.
they were here, weren't they?
Oh yes, Dad would never go back.
Right.
Dad never went back.
They didn't have
He
good
said-
memories.
He says, this is the greatest country ever in the world, he says. He says, you got opportunity, you can work if you want, you can believe in. He says, this is the greatest country in the world. He says, and he never went back.
My grandfather was the same. He never,
Yeah.
he was American.
Yeah, he said all the time, this is the greatest country there ever was. But they would get together, like the brothers. I think 2 of them worked in, or 3 of them worked in Roebling, wire mill, and 1 worked for public service, and 1 worked for the railroad, and General Motors. 1 worked for General Motors.
Your dad worked for Roebling.
Dad worked for Roebling, and Uncle Bill worked for Roebling, and I think Uncle Jim worked for Roebling. And they'd say, where are you going this weekend? Oh, we're going out to Frank's. See you there. Well, they'd all be out there, you know. They'd all be out there, and they'd talk, you know, about Ireland and what's going on over there, and the Irish Free State and all that. But other than that, he never mentioned too much about Ireland, you know. And so, but this is where I picked up most of the Irish, was when they were talking, and they'd always end up in an argument.
How old were you when your grandfather died?
Oh, Kick, I think I was either 4 or 5. I'm not sure.
Do you remember him?
Funny, Kick, I don't remember him, but I can remember certain things.
Yes, you did.
You know, I can remember sitting on the porch, and he'd always take chocolate cake and break it up and put it in milk for me, you know. I can remember that, and I can remember when he died. I can remember he was in the front bedroom, and I was sitting on the steps, and when they came out, you know, and I knew something was wrong. You know, I didn't really know what was going on, but he had died, and I can remember him being laid out
In the house.
in the house. I don't remember him that, but I can remember parts of it, you know. I can remember Helen Clark and Kay Bach.
They were his cousins.
Well, Helen Clark was a niece.
Niece, right.
Right. And I can remember them kneeling by a chair that I was sitting in.
Sang the rosary.
Sang the rosary. And things like that. And Monmouth Junction, what I remember about Monmouth Junction was, at that time, as I said, the railroad was, we had to cross the railroad to get over there. And I had to go past this bar all the time.
And that kid used to come
yeah.
out and bother you. That girl that's sitting alongside of you there.
I was 15, and she was 12. And her father had the first television in town.
Uh-oh.
You know, in the bar.
That's what attracted you.
In the
I
bar.
thought it was Catherine.
No.
And the guys, we all used to gather outside that big window and look in, watch the television, the fights, the wrestling. And one day this girl came out, and she looked pretty good.
For a 15-year-old boy, right?
Right, for 15 to 12-year-old, she was pretty nice. So, it's been that way ever since.
He was talking about
That's right.
the first television. My father had the first car in Monmouth Junction, and it was one of those, you see them on the antique show now. It was a very big car, and it had the wind down canvas curtains, you know, the rain, and we thought we were quite the thing.
I bet you did.
He had this first car, and he would be driving it all along. But that brought back your memory when you said you had the first TV.
Well, how long was Pearson's store there? I mean, when did Pearson...
The first store burnt down. We were still living in that little house across from the funeral home.
You were there, the first store.
The first store.
Now, did Pearson own that then?
He owned it, and then he built,
A new one.
and then what you call bought it.
Melfi.
Melfi,
Yeah, see, that's, I remember, it was still Pearson's. There was Pearson's store, there was Emmons's store,
Right, down near the railroad.
down by the railroad. Tish's store when we were kids.
Yeah, but that wasn't there yet.
Yeah, when we,
Well, when we were,
kids.
when I was a
You
kid.
know who lived there? Did you know the Woodburys, Kiki?
No.
Ellen Woodbury.
No,
I never, Ellen and her mother would come to church every Sunday, but I never saw Nan. Now, whether she was a widow, I don't know.
Don't know that name.
And they lived in that Kish's store. I mean, the
Yeah,
house
well,
there.
where
Well,
Kish
that's
is
down by the track.
Right.
By
Yeah,
Stouts
Kish
Pond.
Right,
Down past Stouts.
right, that was
Okay.
the store. And as
Okay.
entertainment, as you said, shows come out.
At the hall, was
At the hall, Mechanics Hall, they'd have these shows. You have to, if I remember them, you got
This is the
to.
this is the first time somebody's brought the shows up.
Yeah, they'd have these shows come out. They were like vaudeville shows or something, you know. And they'd have the chairs all set up there and you'd watch the show.
Kitty, you remember carnivals that we had at the church?
Carnivals at the church.
Carnivals at the
Very
church.
little
They had
back
dances
then.
there too.
Yeah.
Now that you
At
mention
St.
that.
Cecilia's?
Yeah,
Yeah.
St.
And then-
Cecilia's,
Other entertainment that we had was, again, same entertainment Aunt Marie had.
Hungry Hill.
Sleigh riding on Hungry Hill.
That's the
or,
movie. We didn't even have the movie.
Well, we didn't have the movie, but
People have a cup of coffee?
then we'd go down to the pond, Stouts Pond, and ice skate. We'd ice skate at Scouts Pond. But on Sunday, we'd always go to church. We'd walk what we call the Y, around the Y. A bunch of us kids walked around the Y. Kay and Gloria and myself and Terry, I guess we all walked around the Y to church. And on the way back, we'd stop at the reservoir. And I got pushed in a couple times.
Did you ever swim there?
Oh, yeah.
Did any girls ever swim there?
I don't remember any girls ever swimming there I mean, everything was swimming there. Yeah.
Also, didn't they swim behind the railroad?
Well, that
Oh,
was the
that's when you
reservoir.
jumped it.
They used to drown puppies there and
Yeah.
stuff too. We used to find all kinds of stuff in there.
Snakes and puppies.
The
Oh,
reservoir was for what?
well, it was for the trains. I mean, in the old days.
Steam train.
The steam engines. Now, see, I remember the steam engine. I was
Yes.
talking to, who was I talking to that about the other day? Mike or somebody, about the steam engines that used to come through, and he set the fields on fire.
Mm-hmm.
Did anyone tell you that way back in the late teens and early 20s that you did your marketing in your local community? And did you know Butcher Van Dyke?
Yes.
With Van Dyke? Well, he had the butcher
Well,
shop.
I know of him.
Yeah. Well, so you had to go every day to get your meat at the butcher shop. Then they always had the bread. The bakery would come around and deliver bread every day. We used to get 14 loaves of bread every week because there was such a tribe of us. And
Well, the baker was right next to you.
Next
Or
to
next to Santowasso.
The baker would come. Grandma used to have to walk to the butcher shop to get the meat for Mama. She used to walk to the grocery store to get the groceries. And that was about all that
And
Mama
you had a
said.
milkman and you had
The
a
milkman came to the
and-
house, you're right. The iceman came to the house. The old refrigerators that you put a pan underneath to catch the melted water, or melted ice, yeah.
Well,
And then
Mr.
once a week, they used to go to New Brunswick on Saturdays. I know my mother did, and she would buy her butter and her coffee. She always used to buy Lambrex butter, came in a tub like. And she would buy, that's what apparently they didn't sell butter in the stores in those days, did they?
Big tubs.
Yeah, I know, but they didn't sell it locally, did they, butter?
Well, we didn't have the refrigeration.
Well, they had the old-fashioned ice box.
Who was the guy who used to come around with the truck?
Underhill.
Pots.
Potts,
Potts.
right?
Jimmy
Potts.
Potts and her dad.
Right.
What do they sell?
Fruits and vegetables.
Fruits and
Produce.
vegetables and everything.
They used to have the bells.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They were
There
coming
was
down the
There
road.
was a man used to come around and sell horseradish and coconut.
yeah, I remember him too.
Then there was another man, of course, the fuller brush man, I
Oh,
remember.
yeah.
And
Who,
insurance man.
Mrs. Ginther. Ginther? She lived where Marbitos lived. She used to come around and sell some kind of brushes and stuff.
We used to call it Wonder Water. It was like Clorox or something. We used to call it
I
Wonder
don't know,
Water.
she sold all this kind of, she used to come around all the time.
Grandpa Santowasso used to go in a wagon down to Dean's and sell vegetables too.
When he had the produce.
When he had the produce and groceries too, because Mr. Inzetta, Carmen Inzetta was telling us today. I didn't know my grandfather had a wagon and did that.
Yeah.
But
Did
Kay
you,
was
Kay?
talking
I didn't know
about
that.
Kay was talking about the movies, we not having the movie out. But what we do on Sundays afternoon, I mean, trains ran through here, what, about every half hour? You could get a train either way.
Not on the week, not on Sunday. Sunday was a
Oh,
bad
yeah,
day.
Sunday's a bad day. But we all get together and we go into New Brunswick on a train. We go to the movies in there. And then,
And you came out, you got your
you
hot
had
dog
50
at the
cents or
Crystal.
$1, right. Go to
And then you
movies,
got,
you
you went
get-
across and got your orange popsicle, and then you got on the train and came home. That was your
That's it.
Sunday
That
afternoon.
was your Sunday afternoon.
And the Kiki, they did the sort of low-end tour. Maurice was old. We would get on the train, go to New Brunswick, go to the movies, and then go to the Chinese restaurant
every Saturday.
every Saturday.
But
The
you were
two
a
of
little
us.
more than 5 or 6.
How
You were
old were
about 10, I
Were we that old?
You may have been a little older.
Because they didn't want to serve you, remember?
Yeah.
Didn't you have to prove you had your money or
Yes,
something?
we had to show them our money
Who
before
of
they would
these
serve
kids
us.
came in off the
Because
street?
when they were younger, you used to take them in on Saturdays and take them to the dentist, if you
Mhm.
recall, and then they'd pick up their bakery goods at Rutgers Bakery or whatever it was called.
It
Then
was
they'd
that
come to my
high, I was-
office. I worked for the TV League in New Brunswick, and all these kids would come at 12 o'clock for me to drive. They don't go one way on the train, but then I bring them home at noontime.
Well, we used to go in, I can remember Gloria and I don't know who else, we'd go and help you stuff the
TV, when they were-
TVs,
yeah, when
the
it was
Christmas
sale
deals.
sales.
We were
Mhm.
in scouting, I think, then or something,
You
I don't
could've,
know.
Yeah,
But,
that was when you were older.
yeah,
Yeah.
we used to go in on Saturday mornings.
Does anybody mention the other 2 schools that were in
Oh,
Monmouth
the
Junction?
Dayton and Dean schools?
No.
What?
The one down there on the Y, down below the
What?
church.
What?
There was a school down
Oh,
there.
yes.
And there was the one up
Up
on
here, right up here on Ridge Road.
Prime Road and Ridge Road, that
Yeah.
was a school.
That was a little school.
But there was one down on, below the Catholic Church, the old Ridge Road. There was a school right there, I don't know
I
whether,
don't remember that one.
Benchels and,
But I do
No.
remember this one up here.
no, Gutschalks,
Down by Gottschalk's there.
down by Gutschalks there,
What's,
across from
we've
Mahaka.
never heard about this one, right?
No.
What do you know
Didn't
about
somebody
this?
get killed
This
there?
is something that
I
nobody knows
just
about.
know there were schools
Yeah,
there.
yeah, there was.
And that was before this one in Monmouth Junction. Both of them
Do you remember that, Marie?
were before that, she doesn't
Mother,
remember.
what do you
That
remember?
had to be before my time then. Because when we came
I
to
heard
Monmouth
there was
Junction,
school
the one
there,
was
but I
down the
don't
road
remember.
here, our new
Because I
road.
used to go to Monmouth Junction School.
Now, Mike, you went to Jamesburg High School?
I went to Jamesburg High School. I graduated from Jamesburg High School.
Catherine, now that
Catherine
you've
was-
joined us.
Well, what do I remember?
Start from you're young.
I can tell you one thing, when, as I say, we were so young, and we were boyfriend, girlfriend, every time we went anyplace, we had to have an escort. So it was either Butch
Oh,
or Jane. We preferred Butch because we could
You could bribe him.
drive in.
Give him a nickel, eh?
Yeah, Butch, we're going to movie here. Sit over there.
Well, it was the same when we were young. Neither one of us were allowed to go out alone. Do you remember that, Kay?
Oh,
We always
no.
had to go together. Parents were very, so strict in those years.
Tony used to come up on his bicycle. Of course, he didn't have a license then either.
Well, I started actually in November of kindergarten down here in the Monmouth
Yeah,
Junction
They
School.
did have kindergarten then? They didn't when I
See,
was.
they didn't when I did
They
either.
had it when I was there too.
So that
See,
was-
I
They
can't
didn't.
remember.
I repeated
What?
first grade.
Well, did I go to kindergarten or not?
Here, yeah.
Did I? Okay.
Yeah.
I started out,
It was one colored kid that was there.
Mom, you can't put this in
Yeah,
there now.
it's okay, it's okay.
And
Mom.
she would come home because there's colored kids.
Mother,
Well, there was no age admission either, and way back in those days. If you were 4.5, and you could do your thing, they took you into school
Yes,
very
yes.
young, yes. Where now, you know,
They had
it's,
preschool and they
It was
all these
actually-
things were
yeah,
new. And
they
it's
would put you
really
right
the way
into-
we went to school.
but they put you right into first grade if you were able to do the work, yeah.
Ungraded and all that, that we
Uh-huh.
heard so much
And
about.
you'd skip a grade now and then if you were ahead
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
class.
you could skip a grade.
I
Yeah.
never was fortunate enough to do that.
but anyhow, I was in the Junction School until 6th grade, through 6th grade. 7th and 8th went to Dayton, and then graduated from Jamesburg High School, and then got a BS in teaching at Georgian Court College. However, back while growing up, I can remember living in the tavern, and evidently there wasn't much refrigeration because you had the Coca-Cola coolers that had to have the
Big
Ice.
ice put in them.
Mission soda.
Right, the Mission soda, that was
Remember
the
Mission?
And
orange.
Catelli's.
Well,
Yeah,
the,
Catelli, yeah.
did it come from Catelli? But anyhow, that was a big thing, because that was a big bottle and you got more for your money. So you went for that. I can also remember skating on Scouts Pond. No.
Monmouth Junction regressed.
Right. The train was your mode of transportation until you got to drive, because there was no bus service or anything else. And then I married and stayed in Monmouth Junction until
Married and everything went downhill.
until retirement, and we're still pretty much involved. It's, you know, staying here during the week and going back to the shore. But
Well, everybody was a volunteer fireman or a first aider, right? I mean, it was almost like that was expected of you.
and I
Yeah,
can
yeah.
remember when you said fire. I can remember when they allowed the older kids in the town to take the Indian tanks, which were the tanks. I don't know if anybody brought that out.
No.
And you were allowed, you know, because of the fires along the railroad, especially from the trains.
I think they called us junior firemen.
Junior fireman, yep.
I wasn't
Junior
called anything, but I
fireman,
used
I
to
was a
get a
junior fireman.
tank, I know.
Yeah, about
And you were
15.
paid.
And,
You were paid $1 for every forest, what they call
every
forest
forest,
fire.
I was just saying that to Mrs. Skank. I thought
Yeah.
it was $1.17 maybe.
Well-
It was
Well,
dollar when
maybe
you
by the
started.
time
Yeah, it
you
was
came around,
$1.17. Yeah.
but it was $1.
Catherine,
Yeah.
was that because of World War II and there
No, that
were
was
many
even
young
later.
people, or
That was even later.
even later, or
yeah.
that maybe you did these things?
I just think because they didn't have the help. I don't know, you know, if it was after, it was during and after World War II. I just think they needed whoever, you know, was
Could do
available
Right,
to do this.
right.
And you used to put the alarms in right from the house.
Oh, yeah.
I used to.
Mhm.
I was very young, and I used to push the button, and
There
then
was three places, right?
it was Van Site. No, not Van. Melfi. No, where was it, Mom? It was Voorhees's. Voorhees's
not gonna work. I gotta.
and us.
Voorhees's,
I told you
Santowasso,
that wasn't going to
and
work.
Conover's.
And Conover's.
Now, Catherine, do you remember? You probably don't remember when Tony's Bar was really a place for young people to hang out, and not only to drink, but that was their entertainment.
Pool,
It was the pool
playing
table
pool.
and really driving your mother crazy, especially a couple I know of, and but
Yeah,
it really
it
was a
it
place.
was entertainment
Right.
as well, or what
Place
can
to
I-
meet and a place to do.
to socialize. And when the ice cream parlor was there was one table, and I can remember younger people coming in and sitting
That was my
there
favorite place to go.
Yeah, we
and
used to-
chatting,
we used to
especially on a
make-
Sunday.
We used to make Sundays too.
Oh, yeah, you had a regular
Yeah.
soda bar.
Yeah.
Soda
Fountain,
we make
soda fountain there.
Right.
I remember when Dad got that, he wasn't my father-in-law at the time, but I remember when he put that in, they got
And then the
that.
Breeze sold that when they went down there by the station down there,
Right. They had that.
package store.
That was another thing, you could gather bottles, you know, beer bottles, when you get the deposit. You know, and what is 2 cents for a little beer bottle, and if you had the big ones, you got a nickel, and you'd save your money, and then you'd save it all up, and I'd go to Santawasso's
Buy
ice
other
cream
bottles
parlor,
for it.
and I'd get me a half
Banana
pint of
split.
chocolate ice cream. Man, that was living.
Costas.
Cost
Oh, it's just French
Maybe
One
we
of-
touching, delicious.
Yep.
Yeah.
one of the
Costas
best ice creams
French
around.
ice cream.
Certainly not fat-free.
No. And then
All those
sometimes when we're
emulsifiers and-
all around the gang of us, we'd go to Emmons's store, and we'd buy a thing, as you say, Mission soda, because they're big bottles.
Did
And
anybody,
we get the cupcakes, and
excuse me,
that would be our lunch.
anybody mention the gates in Monmouth Junction to go across the railroad?
Yeah, I
Or the
did.
bridge? Okay.
Yeah, the bridge came there in '53.
Yes.
You should remember that.
Train to
Right?
get to the church.
53.
And it also had a lot to do with the volunteers too, the first aid and fire, when they would want to come across
Mhm.
and couldn't because, you know,
Long freight with us.
Right.
You used to
Yeah,
count the
yeah,
cars and think
long.
it was endless. tell
They
you.
had some long freights.
Wasn't the Doss house the end of the houses for Monmouth Junction when we lived there at the bottom of the hill?
What's she talking
The
about?
Doss house, that was on
I
the
think
other
you're
side
right.
of the street,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
But
would
was
say
that,
you're right.
that was the tail end of
No.
Monmouth Junction then?
It's still there.
But Spar's house was there.
Yes,
The
because
Spires may have been there, but that's the
Right.
only one. All those other homes
Well,
were
that-
one of the 5 oldest houses in
in
town.
the area.
She's still alive, Mrs.
Today's her birthday, 92 years old.
Oh, God.
She was
Imagine.
fantastic, wasn't she?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Sharp as a tack. Watching the stock market, as a matter of fact.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
If you can be that age and that alert, that's wonderful.
Okay, do you think that's it?
Look at all these kids.
Yeah. And we in our
Jump in there,
days,
Grandma. You can name some of the kids. Good. Keep
Great
going.
in our days, we didn't have the school buses
I have
like,
another picture
you
like
know,
that.
we walked
The
from
younger ones in there.
mostly to grammar school.
Can you
To,
picture
I don't
dressing
think
your
we're in
kids'
here, are
dress
we? No, we're not
tracks
here.
now to go to school?
Huh?
Can you picture the kids?
I needed
Yeah, that's what I
boys in
say,
there,
nowadays
Mike
you
or
gotta
West
stop
or
at every
Ed.
house.
Right.
I mean, we'd walk,
This is Margaret Finnegan, Kathleen Finnegan. This girl here was, her name was, she was related to the Rowlands. I forget what her last name was. And what is this? Oh, I don't know. See these?
I was speaking with Anna Finnegan,
Is she still alive? I still
Anna
know that.
McGuire.
Yeah, I know.
And if, being that we're going out of town with this show, maybe Tony would want to go to East Brunswick and do that. And she was reminded me of her father running the manure dump.
Yeah, yeah,
And it was a lucrative business, and it was the Waits from Dean's that started that business.
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember
And
that.
hired her dad, and they used to bring the manure out from New York and drill. I think Tony knows exactly where that was. What was it you were talking about?
Manure dumps. That's where we used to go swimming. Remember,
you
Mike?
go fishing, you were always,
used to
you
go
were always going
Okay,
fishing. at
come on
the
back
brook.
over here a minute. I want to ask you a question about a frog.
One thing I want to tell you, one thing I want to tell you about
Joe
the school,
Santowasso.
if I may, Butch.
Sure.
This is
Mrs.
the
Weaver,
reeling girl.
Mrs.
Wait.
Weaver,
I don't know whether you remember them.
Hold off, just because it's too confusing
yeah,
with two
it's
conversations.
confusing with two. Mrs. Weaver, as we said, was a great teacher. She taught my mother, she taught all us kids, 4 kids. I'm the youngest, and then she taught my nephew. So she taught 3 generations.
Well,
before.
in those days, you only had to be a high school graduate to teach. You didn't have to have a college education. Then later, she did go to normal school, but when she first started to teach, she was only a high school graduate. That's all.
I don't know.
That's all that, well, that I'm talking about 70 years ago, 75 years
Yeah, I
ago.
don't
They
know.
only had to be a high school graduate, and then she went on to Trenton State, I believe, and then got her teacher's certification.
You and
Mother
Ruth
be
Weaver
nice.
were you and Ruth Weaver were real good friends, right?
Yeah, we went
Yeah.
all through school together, Ruth
Yeah.
and I. Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, I'm just saying, you know, that Miss Weaver taught 3 generations in our family. And she taught all the way down from my mother, all the way down to my nephew. And
It'll be the same thing here too, because all my brothers were there, and then your mother, and then you people had Mrs. Weaver, so.
yeah,
So
but
it
that's
was
still-
not,
that's
2 generations, yeah.
that's
but
2
it was
generations.
not unusual for her to have, 2 to 3
2 to 3
generations.
generations.
Kay's had 2 generations. A lot of them. Did you ever have 3? No, you never had 3.
Okay, to get them all together?
Now, one day you were going to go into the bathroom and take a bath. I had come back from the manure dumps fishing with Stanley Olson, and we had caught a certain little creature down there that was down in a well.
It wasn't little, it was gigunta, it was a bullfrog that went in our bathtub. Went into the bathroom and here's this thing, wow, I mean,
You never knew what I'd bring home with you.
you didn't even turn around, you went out a lot faster than you went in.
When you were a child, did you have an outdoor privy with your house too?
When I was maybe 5,
When they got your bathroom put
Right.
in? Yeah.
I can remember the day it was done because Mr. Griggs put it in,
Yeah, he did all the work.
And he wasn't quite finished, and my mother was giving me a bath in the bathtub. So I remember that. I was very embarrassed.
But before you used the bathtub, did you do the same as they used those galvanized wash tubs? And then, you know, they didn't shower every day like they do now, way back 80 years. Bathtub in front of the old cook stove, you know, so it'd be nice and warm. And then all the kids, the girls would be, one time they'd all sit in this big wash tub, and that's how you would get your scrubbing down. Yeah.
What amazed me even more is the process for washing clothes that I remember. And I don't remember my mother using a scrub board, only
Oh, you don't remember
only for the real dirty,
Yeah.
Like for the collars and stuff.
Yeah.
from the things that Mike and Terry did. I remember her scrubbing Terry's pants. But, I mean,
And you had a pump too, didn't you, outside?
well, I can remember my mother with the washer that agitated.
Agitate.
Yeah.
And the
And
ringer.
put it through the ringer, and you had to draw the water, and you had to heat the water, and
Yeah, I had to
what
do
a
that,
process, and hang them on the line. And hope
in the
and pray it
winter
was
you-
a good daddy, you didn't have to take him down when he came home from
He's stiff as a
school.
board in the wintertime.
Right,
Yeah, in the winter it took them days because you brought them in just as wet.
Did you
Because they
ever,
froze.
Kik, did you ever hear the story about Terry and I that we painted, when we painted
Your dad's,
Dad's
I
car
remember the
and
day.
and the
that you
bedroom?
I remember the car, but I don't remember the bedroom.
We
But
painted
he
the
thought
car.
it was a good job.
Right, and we went upstairs and we painted the bedroom. And Dad had, I get, what do you call it, chest on chest, but it had doors that opened.
It was a chaperone.
And the drawers pulled out. Well, we painted inside and closed the doors. Well, when they found that, they cleaned it all up, you know, and everything, but they never opened the doors to see if we had done it. Well, when he finally opened the door, I guess the next day or so,
All chipped.
no, it was all painted,
And they
cream paint, because our house was cream. Remember, our house used to be cream and green, and it was all painted green. And my father, God be good to him, just laughed and says, "We'll leave it there, and we'll always remember Terry and Mike." And it was there till he died. Yeah, so
I remember that.
we painted the car, we painted the headlights, Terry, we set a field on fire one time.
And it's a good thing the barn can't talk.
Oh, it's a good thing the barn can't.
Yep, yep. I always teased Joyce Dooney Young, because I used to play with Tom and Jean,
Right.
Tom Murphy and Jean Ryan down there in the Bowery. And Joyce used to come over. And for some reason, I was never allowed to play in the barn when Joyce was there. So I always tease her about that.
Did you ever hear the game Gitchy Goomy?
Oh, yeah. That's the one Joyce does.
Tommy Young will say, "Forget this Gitchy Goomy."
What's it? What are you talking about?
It was a game.
It was a game they
Well, you know,
played.
Catherine, I
know
never knew what it was.
I don't know what it was, but Tom and Jean and Joyce and them, they played Gitchy Goomy.
And then when the Trenton gang came, the barn used
Yeah.
to be, well, it was a great place to play.
Yeah, it was a great place
A
to
lot of
play.
things in there.
How many people gonna have a cup of coffee before
No,
this?
thank
Now we got to go to Princeton Junction in a couple of minutes. We're
Yeah.
ready to go.
Running
You gonna see
late.
Aunt Viola?
Yep.
We started
do the
at
same
9.
thing.
She can reminisce even before
I
our
don't know how you
time.
can do this all day long.
Well, I think we had good times in those days, you know.
Oh, yeah,
You
we
know,
were
we-
happy. We were happy when our
We didn't have as
childhood.
much as we had today,
Did I
the
ever-
kids.
did I tell
Everybody
you?
didn't have their own car and
Yeah. Well,
things
we
like
were-
that, but we
Yeah,
had
when the
fun.
Presbyterian church at Christmas time, we'd go
Yeah,
over.
we know that, you know, all the kids in town. Kiki said she used to go
Yeah,
there.
I don't remember, I maybe did, but I don't
We
remember.
used to get
No, we didn't.
I was
a
pretty
little
young.
box of candy and our orange.
I don't think we did. Our age group didn't.
Lizzie Anthony used to
Oh,
always
she was
talk
great.
about it.
Too bad she's not alive.
She'd tell you about what the picnic woods. Now, did you ever hear of the picnic woods?
I don't think so.
There's across from where you live, right where that corner is, back in there, was this big clearing and things they called in there, and they called that the picnic woods. And they'd have picnics and everything back there. Lizzie used to tell us these things.
Is that by Dean's Pond there then?
Back by Dean's Pond, right.
Well, I used to ice skate. That was a beautiful pond years ago.
You often wondered why
They just won't fix that dam.
they never did that, because I used to go back there too. We'd fish,
Fish, right?
you know.
Beautiful pike back there,
Yeah,
and
it was a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Back there, beautiful pond. That was a nice
Mhm.
pond.
Mhm.
But I wondered why, but it's a dam, huh?
The dam's gone, yep. I think it's 73 or 74 it went down, that was it. They
Some
never
of the
fixed
water's
it.
going south instead of north.
Yeah, that's another reason, yeah.
But there's a picture I want you to see if you want it, I don't know.